Hello. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how I went from owning zero to multi-million pound property portfolio. You ready? And of course, there's some mistakes along the way, and I'm going to share those with you in order that you don't make the same mistakes. So I'm Susanna Cole. I've founded the Good Property Company, which is a fantastic online business, giving you lots of resources. Have a look at the website. It's absolutely fabulous, well worth going over. And of course, also this website. And I've got 15 years of experience in the property investing industry. I absolutely love sourcing. We did £45 million worth of property, 200 deals, sourced at an agreed purchase price of 30 million quid. So I kind of learnt a thing or two along the way, but shall we dive right back to the beginning? Yeah, I wanted to get into property. I wanted to leave my day job. I wanted to have no mortgage on my personal home, and I wanted to have a bit of a pension. And that was really the kind of sum total of my ambition. And I could see that property was the way forward. I had, within my own family, I was head of household, so single parent. I had 2 responsibilities. And of course, I didn't want to go out at night time because they were asleep and I wanted to be protective of them. And so I was at home. So what I did, I obviously had a day job in order to pay for the family, but what I did was at night time, I would buy these old wrecks of houses in Scotland, and when the kids were asleep, you know, everything apart from plumbing and electrics, I would do myself. Because what else are you going to do? Watch telly? You know, I'd rather kind of strip a wall, to be quite honest, most of the time. And what I discovered over the period of just a few short years is almost, I think all 3 houses that I did as family homes doubled in value. And I used to sell the houses every 2.5 years. You know, it would take me 2.5 years of nighttime steady work to get them ready. Then I'd sell them. Then I'd go buy another wreck. The kids and I would move in. I'd do my day job. I'd come home. I'd renovate. And then I'd sell them again. So I ended up having a little bit of equity and moving down to Bristol. You would have thought that the light bulb would have gone on at that point, yeah? Because you've basically doubled house, got some equity and being able to buy a much larger family home. And I also kept some money aside ready to start my property investing career. No, what happened at that point was I went, whoa, this seems really frightening. It was all very well when we lived in the home, when we owned the home, but actually to be a landlord, oh my Lord. Whoa, although in theory I understand this whole concept, the practice is this feels really frightening, and I retreated and backtracked for about 18 months, and you may relate to that. You may be in that place right now. So what I did, which kind of in a way was useful to me, but also slowed me down, is I went into analysis by paralysis. And again, that might be where you are right now. I wrote myself the most fabulous business plan. It was 16 pages long. I did tons of reading. There weren't the kind of books that you've got now. You didn't have the YouTube channels, you didn't have the podcast, but there were books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, you know, those kind of books. So at least the core principles were around. And so what it meant on the one hand, negatively, I slowed down, but on the other hand, I had, inverted commas, rehearsed every single possible scenario that could go wrong, or almost every single possible scenario, not quite, almost every single possible scenario that could go wrong before it did go wrong because of fear. So I wrote this long business plan, and every time I wrote another piece of the plan, I'd be like, oh, I don't really know how to do that. So then I'd start researching that. At that point, I joined a professional organization, which is now called the NRLA, which I highly recommend you join, which is the Professional Landlord Organization. And I would be like hanging on to their legal helpline, asking loads of questions and really exploring, because you didn't have the resources that you guys have now got. So that was mind-blowing that I had doubled each of my 3 personal houses. Then fearful and went back into the rabbit hole and like armadillo, careful. And then, okay, let me start in theory to lay out the ducks in a row, the scenario before I get started. So at least it gave me the practice when I got started. So how did I start? Oh my Lord, I was so terrified. I was actually physically shaking when I picked up the keys from the estate agent. It was a little 1-bed flat called Wellington Avenue, bought from an estate agent. It was a housing association selling. I bought it for £80,000. At the time it was worth £120,000. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And what was it? It was a kitchen living room. The kitchen was tiny. It was like a little corridor in the living room. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. When I picked up the keys, I was absolutely shaking. However, when I went to the property, knowing, because I'd done my research, it was worth 120 and I'd bought it for 80,000, and because it was so tiny, I opened the door and I was like, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? Turned up and went, oh, okay, this is easy, let's go. Within 30 seconds of having bought that first investment property, I was hooked. Let's talk about the numbers. Bought for 80,000. It was a really small refurb, less than 8 grand. And to be fair, I kind of, rolled my sleeves up and I got stuck in. I didn't do the plumbing, I didn't do the electrics, but I did more or less everything else because, again, one of the early mistakes is you do the refurbs yourself because you're kind of very conscious of money. But don't do that. You make much more money if you go find more deals and get other people who are much faster than you to do the refurb. However, I did one of the many mistakes. So bought for 80,000, end value 120. I got a 75% loan to value mortgage once I'd bought it, so I refinanced, and I actually pulled out £90,000 lending on a 1-bed flat that I'd recently just bought for £80,000. All your money back out. It was a very small refurb, so I was able to pay for my refurb, and I was also able to pay for my fees. Nice. So that flat cost me no cash after the initial 6 months because I refinanced it, all my cash back out. Now, I rented it out. It was a single let. I learnt my skills as a landlord, but as a single let, you never make an enormous amount of money. So I just chundered along, rented it out, and actually owned it for years. And then eventually, I decided to sell it simply to release all of the equity because I was going to much more profitable making properties at that point. So sometimes you sacrifice your early ones in order for your long-term growth. And also, I never want you doing a rental yield less than 10%. Yield is annual rent divided by purchase price, because you just never get off the starting blocks soon enough. So that was property number 1, simply bought discounted, refinanced, all cash back out, learnt my skills, let's go again. Property number 2, again, 1-bed flat, a little bit scared still, so still kind of going careful. Now this one was a bigger property. It was bought for 150. It was worth 220 at the time. And what I did was the living room, was enormous. So this one was enormous living room, kitchen, which was quite big, and bedroom and bathroom. Now, in Europe, and I'm chatting to you in my flat in Barcelona, they sell properties on square meterage, so you can't get away with this in Europe. In Britain, we sell and value properties based on bedrooms. So I did the classic. I moved the bathroom into the living room, and it was a really big living room, so we had a beautiful kitchen diner separated off, linoleum over there, carpet over here. It was a gorgeous flat, and it was a beautiful period flat with lovely big windows. And then I turned the kitchen into the bathroom just because it was the smallest room, and the bathroom became the second bedroom because it was a bigger room. So I wasn't moving walls. I still had all the water because kitchens and bathrooms still have water, and then for the bathroom, and then I had to put water and gas into the living room. So a little bit more of a refurb, but let's talk about figures. So I bought this one for 150 as a 1-bed, asked permission, which can't be unreasonably withheld from the freeholder, to turn it into a 2-bed. Did the job, got the building regs, and it was worth £220,000. Very nice. Again, I refinanced it back out and I got £165,000 back out. Bear in mind, I only bought it for 150, so I got 15 grand towards the fees and the refurb. So almost all of my cash came out of the second property. So I'm going great guns. What did I do? I started out by renting it as a single let. It's okay, but I knew I needed to make more cash flow because otherwise I was going to get sludged up. So then I shifted it to a serviced accommodation. Now, as a single let, we get about £1,200 from that property. But as a serviced accommodation, dear goodness, you get 3 times that amount. And I remember a particularly memorable weekend where there was the Ryder Cup in Cardiff. Remember, I rent in Bristol, so it's like 45 minutes to 50 minutes drive, but they had no accommodation left in Cardiff. I got £2,400 just for one weekend, which was 2 months rent as a single let. So don't assume that you just need to be renting out as a single let. Look at the highest profit making possibility for your property and decide whether you're going to do that. And of course, in the early days, I managed it myself. Later on, I actually outsourced, so I didn't need to do any of the work myself. Nice. So far we're kind of moving along quite nicely. And remember, have a good look at my website. It's called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. There are tons of resources for you that you can download straight away on how to find these deals, how to manage these deals, how to do service accommodation, so you can get started straight away. That's thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Right, what happened next? Well, at that point I was starting to get a little bit confident, so in we go to auctions. And I bought my next couple of properties at auctions. And this is where I promised you some mistakes. I made some mistakes. The next one was a property called Clouds Hill Road. I bought it at auction. Again, it was from a housing association that was selling through auction for £92,500, and I knew it was worth £130,000 at the time. So again, really nice discount, £37,500 in there, so not bad. However, I had only got one relationship with one builder. I hadn't yet learned that you need to do 3 builders, and there are other videos I've done for you if you look in the renovation and development playlist about how to recruit builders. And this builder had gotten a little bit comfortable, shall we just say. So I didn't get 3 quotes. I just went with the one guy, and he went into that property and stripped it back to the walls, so without discussing with me. So the good news with the discount was my mistake in being overcharged effectively for overwork. It just created more work. It wasn't necessary. Was that at least the discount could manage some of that. My 4th property was Brixton Road. Again, bought at auction, a beautiful little 2-bed house. Do you notice I haven't yet moved to HMOs? Still a bit scared, still a bit nervous. I think it was my 7th property before I did an HMO. But again, I bought at auction, and this one I bought for £85,000, and again I knew it was worth £130,000. So how did I buy it at auction? I bought it with a bridging loan. I've done other videos for you on bridging loans, so definitely have a look at those. Very useful videos for you guys, which means you can buy really, really quickly. It was technically unmortgageable, which means that the mortgage company would say technically somebody can't move in there at the moment, so you need to improve particularly the kitchen and the bathroom. Plus, when you're buying at auction, you need to be buying under auction circumstances. So again, just to kind of demonstrate the BRRR, buy, refurb, refinance and rent out, Brixton Road I bought for 85. It was worth 130, so I refinanced it and I got £97,500 of a mortgage. So I actually pulled out, if you like, £12,500, which again, because the refurb was really small, helped me pay for the refurb and helped me pay for the fees. So although I had to put some cash in temporarily, after 6 months I was able to pull all my cash back out, which really helped me own some properties. So by this point I had Wellington Avenue, Claremont Road, Clouds Hill Road and Brixton Road, so I'm kind of rocking and rolling. Now let's go on to some wonky houses. I went and looked at a property that was non-standard construction. Again, at auction I was starting to get a little bit enthusiastic, I was starting to gain my confidence. Something called Dorchester Road. It was fairly scruffy. It had lapsed planning permission for a block of flats in the side of the garden that was no longer going to be allowed to be built because although it had planning permission, the person hadn't built it out in time, the planning permission had lapsed and the sizes that were needed for flats had increased. So just because something's got lapsed planning permission, don't think that you can still get it. Always go back and check the current planning regulations for a property. So effectively it didn't have planning permission anymore, but of course the auctioneers were pushing the fact that you could get a block of flats here, but when you went and found out, you couldn't. So buyer beware when you're going to auction. They're going to tell you the stuff which is true but not necessarily productive. I think that's a kind way of saying it, isn't it? But what it did tell me is you could get something in the garden. This was non-standard construction, so I was getting really brave by this point. That means it is not built of standard kind of brick and, you know, slate roof. It was actually built of concrete, one of the many post-war houses from the 50s where we came out of the war and we had to build a lot of houses, so they were built with concrete. They can get, concrete can actually disintegrate, so what tends to need to happen, it needs to get re-bricked, and then you get a certificate to show that it had been re-bricked. If it doesn't have a certificate, then it's very difficult to mortgage it. Now, this one did have a certificate, but the one that it was semi-detached, the one that it was joined onto, didn't. I was lucky to be able to get a mortgage, but sometimes you can't. So always consult with your mortgage advisor on non-standard construction, but don't be put off, because if you can find the solution, woohoo, you're cooking. Right, so this one, what was interesting about it, I kind of more or less bought it at value, which was 180,000. So I didn't buy it discounted, but what was I buying? I was buying a massive side garden where there was already previous planning permission. So I just kept it, I rented it out, I didn't do much refurb, just made it legal. And then I split title. So again, using a solicitor, sold the garden. So kind of the only thing I did was pay for the title to be split and put a fence up and made 75 grand. Not bad. So sometimes you're going to buy properties at value because you know that there's extra value you can make by splitting title. And I got outline planning permission. I didn't get full planning permission, so it was very I think it only cost me like less than £2,000. Really simple outline planning permission. Then the guy that bought it, his name was Bob the builder. He then went and got more in-depth planning permission. And in fact, he used my same architect. So question there is, how many houses with large gardens can you find? 75 grand, and I had people queuing up to buy it. And if you can't actually buy the property in the first place, why don't you go and joint venture with people who've got large gardens but don't know how to put planning permission or outline planning permission on the garden, split title, and joint venture with them. If you sold it for 80 grand and you got 40 grand, how many of them do you need to do to make £1 million in a year? And there are loads of people with large gardens who don't have those skills. So there's a really great tip for you. So I was starting to really get to know my area, and I was starting to move from single lets to HMOs or shared houses. And I was starting to really learn that I think it's really important to cluster. Like I've got quite a lot of properties that are like 1, 2 and 3 minutes drive from each other. So it's super easy to be able to do inspections, to be able to manage them, for the handyman team to go around them, for the inventory clerks, for the cleaning team, for the check-in, check-out team to go around them. I mean, many of my properties I haven't been in for years, but I'm actually really tightly managing them. And that's because I cluster very close to each other. And now I started to take the leap, if you like, into HMOs or shared houses. And HMO is called a house of multiple occupation. But first, let's talk about my customers. I had early days, I kind of took everybody. And early days, I was middle of the range, if you like, nice houses, painted white, right? So I had a few interesting moments. I had one guy with mental health issues with a sword who I found very frightening and eventually got evicted. And that was not a pleasant experience at all. I had one chap who brought a lady of the night back into the house. Presumably services were delivered, and then he refused to pay for services delivered, so she decided to decorate the house with red wine. And then the police asked me to prosecute her. And I'm thinking, no, you should be prosecuting him for theft, because he thieved those services, if you know what I'm talking about. And then very sadly, I had a girl early on with a child, and it was a really bad domestic violence situation. And that was really upsetting, actually, because I installed police alarms for her, But there is research to show that people in domestically violent situations will potentially take up to 38 times before they leave their partner. So, of course, can't say the word, broke the door, created a lot of physical damage. And I got quite fed up with people messing around with my houses. Now, domestic violence, as we know, is in all areas of society. But generally, I decided to move up the value ladder. So I looked at my value offering, I looked at what other landlords did, and I thought, I need to be better than you guys. I need to have the pick of tenants because I want to have quality tenants, I want to have quality relationships, I want to have an easy life. And I want them to have an easy life. And actually, if you've got tenants who are paying more and you're providing a higher level of, maybe not service, but a higher level of accommodation, they're happier because they're living in a great quality accommodation, and they've actually got more to lose. I don't mean that rudely, but because they're basically intending to buy houses in the future, so they want to keep their credit rating good. So they are less likely to be interested in trying to stiff you for the rent because they've got a future financially, and they don't want you to CCJ them and kind of cap that future. So to get the pick of the tenants, I decided to go up market more into the top 25% segment. And these days I have tenants queuing up for my houses. This year on the student lets, we had the majority of student lets, we actually had tenants bid higher than we were asking for the properties. And that's because of they're beautifully clean, they're beautifully tidy, they're repainted really regularly, and things like a lot of them have got en suites, which is really nice if you're in a shared house. So I improved the service provision and improved the quality. And as a result, I got better tenants, life was easier, everybody had a more fun time. So 2 tips there are be fast on repairs. If something needs sorted, get it done straight away. We use tech, we use Arthur Online. The tenants can report a repair. We always ask them to upload a video or a photo to check whether it's a viable repair or not. And we know that we have 10% set aside for the repairs, and we don't stinge. You know, we're not going to not replace a microwave or a toaster that's not working or whatever. And the second thing is look at what tenants actually would like. And, you know, they're adults. They want their own bathroom. You don't want to share a bathroom anymore. So what we used to do was create HMOs in really lovely big roomy houses. And like Lego, we'd stack the bathroom. So let's say you had a lovely big kitchen dining room at the back, but it has to be really lovely and big. And your dining room and your living room become 2 bedrooms. In the corner is one bathroom and the other bathroom. And then the 2 bedrooms up above, there's one bathroom and the other bathroom. So you've got bathroom 1, bathroom 2, bathroom 3, bathroom 4. It's like Lego, isn't it? And that higher quality provision attracts much higher quality tenants. So I'd highly recommend doing that. You get ease of life, but you can't be a landlord that doesn't repair things where it's appropriate. You've got to be like, yep, we're in, we'll get that sorted, no problem at all. So it's really important to have a great handyman team. And I've now worked with Joe for like, not quite 10 years, but not far off 10 years. It's a brilliant working relationship. And all our plumbers, our electricians, our washing machine repair people, very important. Great working relationship. Trust them implicitly. So I'm now going to talk you through the kind of houses that I now invest in, and the kind of houses that I'd really like you to kind of skip my early days of learning and just go, Suze, you did the learning for me. I'm just going to go straight to the ones you suggest that I do, so that you can earn more money and get there quicker. No point like going through the scared years like me. Let me do that for you, and then you can go straight on. So a great example is a shared house, an HMO. It's fully licensed, really well maintained, called Osborne Road. Bought it for 203,000. At the time, it was worth 330,000, and I refinanced it on a 75% loan to value mortgage. So I was able to pull out £247,000 on a £203,000 purchase. Now I put in 5 bathrooms, so that did cost a bit, but I think it was about a £40,000 to £45,000 refurb. So I bought for 203, got a mortgage of 247 with about a £40,000 refurb. So, but I was able to basically pay for the refurb plus pay for the fees and own that house without having put long-term any of my own cash in. And then it's making over £1,000 a month net profit after all costs. That's the kind of property you want to be investing in. And now, goodness me, it was bought for 203. It's probably worth 450, maybe topping £500,000. And that is not even 10 years later. So once I got that basic model, you buy it for 203, it's worth 330, you pull all your cash back out and you go again. I just rinsed and repeat. I went on a massive HMO buying spree. And at the time I was renting out to professional tenants. So what did that mean? A little bit different to students. It means that everybody moves in and out independently to their own room in their own time. On average, a tenant would stay for 10 months. You know, maybe they'd move into the city, they don't know anybody, they move into a shared house, and then they find either a 1-bed flat, or they fall in love, or they find a group of friends and they want to move in with those friends. I mean, we had people staying longer, but the average was 10 months. I employed people in-house. So I had between 2 and 3 people working full-time in my property business on lettings. So that was a salary outlay of well north of 50 grand, more like 75 grand a year, just on managing my team internally. Plus, I then had to spend quite a lot of time managing the team. And of course, you know, their fault, your responsibility. If there's any screw ups, any mess ups, all of that responsibility comes back and sits on you, the landlord. So it worked for quite a long time, but I knew that if I wanted to live the life that I really saw for myself, which was financial freedom, which was like, I'm in Barcelona, I live in this flat 9 minutes from beach in Barcelona, I go to the sea every day and have a swim in the Med. And I didn't want to be kind of full-time managing people, full-time kind of managing the thousands of or not managing, but overseeing the thousands of viewings that were happening every year. That model, whilst it squeezed every penny out as I grew, and I needed every penny as I grew, wasn't going to be a long-term freedom model. It was a great cash flow model, but not a long-term freedom model. So what did I do? I then took the same properties with the same physicality, and I turned them into student lets. So instead, and literally at one point my team were doing thousands of viewings a year. That's a lot of work, and I'm paying for all of that work. And so what I did then was the students would move in July, but you'd get them to take the property the preceding November, December, January or February. You've also got parental guarantors that so that if they mess up, you're going to say to the parents, I'm terribly sorry, they made a terrible mess, you're going to have to pay for it. And it's basically, although it's 5 people or 4 people depending on the house, it's basically one great big single let, because they all move in and they all move out at the same time. So the viewings just drop through the floor. And then I thought, hang on, I want this life of freedom, so I no longer want to have a team internally, I want to outsource that. So I then got an amazing tenant find company. We ran tests in the first year, settled with the brilliant one, and we've got a great working relationship with them, which means that they find all the tenants, they do all the hard work. Obviously they get paid a fee, and they totally earn that fee, and they do the check-in inventory, they do the checkout inventory, and they do inspections. Nice, isn't it? So you've got parental guarantors who are owner occupiers, you've got other people finding your tenants for you, you know 6 months in advance who it's going to be, so you can plan your cleaners, you can plan your scheduling, you can plan your check-in, check-out and any renovations. And basically they're very large, one group in, one group out. It's almost like single lets, although they're a collective single let with 5 people being responsible and 5 guarantors. Much more efficient. And then I thought, hang on, let's just improve that efficiency even further. Let's get into automation. So first, what can we do? What can we eliminate? Let's eliminate, outsource, and automate, and then delegate. Whereas previously I was delegating first. So we eliminated all the check-in, check-outs by changing tenant type to students from professionals. We outsourced then, rather than having kind of 2 or 3 people that I then had to manage on a kind of weekly basis, to a tenant find company. We then automated, and I use Arthur Online, so that the tenants can check in and they can report repairs. We create a work order, we send it to a handyman, he picks it up on his mobile phone, he messages the tenants directly saying, hey, I'll jump over tomorrow, it's Joe here. And then he marks it off as completed, and if you need him to, then he can upload photographs to show that the job has been done. And loads of things are now automated. So if the tenants are late with their rent, they get automatic text and email messages. If a certificate is coming up a month in advance, we get automatic task reminders, so we're never without certification for safety, right? So eliminate, change tenant type, eliminate all those viewings, outsource, tenant find, automate, absolutely, and then if you still had any tasks left, delegate. So life went from being incredibly busy to beautifully free and swimming in the Mediterranean every single day, because it's 9 minutes walk away from the beach. The same stock, different method of benefiting from. Interesting, isn't it? And it removed the 50 to 75 grand a year bill. And actually the cost of outsourcing and the cost of automation was enormously less, I know that's not quite right English, I'm so sorry, than the cost of employing people. And the thing about tech is it can really take on board about 80% of your lettings admin, so that's amazing. And of course you can even delegate or outsource that to somebody else managing it for you. You guys are so lucky. When I started, there just didn't exist tech. I had to create my own systems. They were all done on Excel spreadsheets, and then we had to copy from one spreadsheet to another. These days it's all automated, and there's quite a lot of landlords soft pieces of software. We use Arthur Online. You are so lucky that you are doing it now. My plan originally that was property would be a future pension for me. And quite quickly I thought, no. In a perfect world, I want to be financially free. I want to leave my day job. I want to jump out of the 9 to 5. I want to run my life the way I see rather than having to work for somebody else. So it became very clear to me that those properties needed to pay for themselves. And that is why I got into the HMO strategy, because they are much more profitable than the single lets. Service accommodation also is much more profitable than single lets. So big mistake that people do is they don't do property. They really like the idea. They start to analyze like I did. And remember, I told you I was at 18 months analysis paralysis, and then that's where they stay. Well, last year property went up by 10% throughout the UK. I mean, obviously different regional variations. So if you had bought a property at £300,000 at the beginning of that year, by the end of the year, your wealth would have gone up by £30,000. So let me just be very clear with you that your analysis paralysis, and I had it for 18 months at the beginning when I was scared. So I hear you, sister or brother, but that's going to cost you money. So the biggest mistake you can do is not taking the scary leap to get into property and start. Okay, write that down. You must get into property. You must start. It's going to be imperfect. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to improve and finesse and grow as you develop along the way and get education. Another tip for you guys about student properties is you get students in their second year. Why? Because then they'll stay in their third year. So you don't even need to have people moving out and in, although sometimes they change like 1 or 2 flatmates, but you end up having the same tenant cohort after they've moved out of tenant halls in year 1, staying in year 2 and year 3. And another great tip for you is asking the students, do you know anybody that would love to move into this house? Because if you've got top end quality houses, your houses are going to be much more popular than other people's, aren't they? So those are great marketing tips for you as well. But along the way, when you're investing, cash flow is definitely going to be problematic. Like, you're a property investor, that's normal. So I had to bring in 2 kind of strategies that really helped me bring additional cash in. And one was deal packaging and the other one was flipping. Let's talk about deal packaging. We ended up doing £45 million worth of property, sourced at an agreed purchase price of 30 million quid, and the majority of those were package deals. We then flipped quite a lot of them, and of course I was the biggest buyer of them. But let me give you some examples so you can understand what I mean about deal packaging and bringing the cash in. What it is you find a discounted deal, you find an investor, the investor buys the deal and pays you a fee. It's almost like a reverse estate agent, isn't it? So, Hedwick Street, bought for 180. It was renovated at 35,000 by the investor and sold for 256,000. Yeah, I got paid 9 grand cash within weeks of it being found, because at a point of exchange. Lovely. So I got paid 9 grand really quickly. I reinvested that in my properties. Gatton Road, bought for 220, sold for 312 and a few pennies. I got paid £11,000 cash within weeks of finding the deal. Church Road, a block of 4 flats. We split up the flats and put one person to each flat. Bought for 270, worth 402. I got paid £13,500. So you can see quite quickly that deal sourcing is a really amazing way for you to bring cash in while you're kind of slightly struggling with cash flow. So the brilliant thing about property, there are so many investors out there who don't know how to find discounted deals, don't want to get their hands dirty, don't have the time, and are really willing to pay you a 5% fee if there's a huge amount of profit in it. And of course you wouldn't sell it unless there was a huge amount of profit in it. So everybody wins on that. You get the cash, which you can then reinvest in property. They get a deal. Everybody is happy. Do you see how simple deal packaging is? It's matching investors, matching them to a property. You get paid a percentage of the property when they buy it. Upon exchange, they go off with the deal. You go off with the cash and go buy yourself more properties. Plus, if you head up a group of, say, 50 investors as I did, and each of them on average has 200 grand, that is you heading up a £10 million buying fund. Quite something. And I've got a lot of resources for you on deal packaging and deal sourcing on my website called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Also some webinars that you can join straight away. So really good resources for you if you're like, you know what, Suze, I'd really like to get some cash in. Now let's talk about flipping, because that was the other way that I brought cash in. In the first 42 flips we did, we brought in £402,000 more than we anticipated. So that's the lovely headline. However, 1 in 5 flips that I sold for less than, now normally it was like 250, 500 quid, maybe £1,000 less, but I think we had 4 clangers that just sold really badly. So if you're going to flip, and the majority of flips I did were with JV partners, so they did the funding, we did all the work, and the extra money was like cherry on top, again, cash back into my business so I could buy more houses. I do want you to tell your investors that it's not guaranteed, it's not, it's not sure. Susanna, 1 in 5 sold for less than, but always undervalue your properties so that you're kind of excited and surprised. Always undervalue to your investors what you think you're going to get, particularly if you're going to do it as a joint ventures. So again, brilliant for the investors, they didn't need to do any work, they just put their money in. Brilliant for me, yes, I had to do work, but I got more cash into my business because my end goal, probably like yours, was financial freedom. And in order to get there, I needed 2 cash generating strategies, flipping and deal packaging. And I delivered on both of those for a period of like less than 5 years. So it didn't take long. So my very first JV was with a chap that I ended up working with for years and years and years. He ended up lending me in total about 3 million quid because he lent me basically 2 house prices a year for 5 years, like 600 grand a year for 5 years. But it was bought for 175, 20 grand refurb. We sold it for 240. We split the profit 50-50. We went again. He did all the funding. I did all the work. Another flip, for example, Mansfield Street, let me check, bought for 150, 15 grand refurb, sold for £207,000. Again, that was one that sold for less than. We hoped and expected 210, but it still made really nice profit. Or, for example, 2 very tired flats in Southall Place, bought for £300,000 between the 2 of them. It was a very small refurb, 7,800 and 6,500, sold for £431,000. 245,000 and 186,000 pounds each. We made a lot of money on flips without using any of my own cash. So you see, it can be done. If I can do it, you definitely can do it. So I've shared my story with you, or some of my story, how I got started, how scared I was, how I got hit by analysis paralysis, how I started in single lets, how I definitely made sure I bought discounted because you need that, and then how I moved into HMOs, and then how I changed customer segment, moved up the value ladder, and then changed customer segment again and moved from professionals to students. And then I automated, eliminated, outsourced before delegation. And so again, I changed the cost within my business, but also more importantly, I changed the time cost. I then moved to Barcelona for half my life, and my properties run beautifully. But I was making sure through joint ventures and through flipping that cash came in the early investing days, so that the cash would come in. I was never too tight in property, because property does suck up cash, until I got to the point that the property portfolio stands alone, and I work a very small amount of time on a weekly basis now for a very large profit margin. These are step-by-step processes. You might want to break this video down. You might want to watch it a couple of times. You definitely want to probably take notes, because it is highly likely that my journey will reflect your journey, but I'd like you to avoid some of the mistakes I did. So what's left to say? 2 things. We've got a brilliant website. It's called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk, stacked full of resources. Everything is online. Everything is immediately downloadable. I want you to head over there now and have a right good look of flipping, joint venturing, finding discounted deals, getting started. Checklist for you to download. It's called thegoodpropertycompany.co.uk. Obviously, like and subscribe, and there'll be a little ending telling you about something free or something that you can download. But most importantly, I just want to wish you good luck. It is scary at the beginning. I totally know that. I remember that very first flat, bought for 80,000, value 120, shaking as I got the keys, and then thinking, whoa, if I can do this, I'm going to do this again. So I absolutely want to wish you good luck. You'll have some speed bumps in property, but you can do this. Hey, I hope you're really enjoying the vids and they're proving to be super useful for you. Right, I got a load of free checklists for you guys. Just click on the link here, pop over to the website and download them now.